Our man Chris Brown is standing by right now outside in the beautiful sunshine at Orchard Park as the Bills practice is underway. Chris Brown, Bills Insider, BuffaloBills.com. Good afternoon, Chris.
Good afternoon.
Great to have you here with us today. You got a quick observational injury update, not official, but what do you see out there as far as injuries?
Yeah, so it looks like for a second straight day, Devon Singletary and Taron Johnson are not going to participate in practice. Neither are dressed to participate today, but they're out here observing. And then for a second straight day, Tre'Davious White in a red non-contact jersey, as we know, added to the injury report yesterday with a neck injury. He just stepped off right after stretch with the strength and conditioning staff, went inside. I really wouldn't be surprised if this is like one of those crick in the neck kind of things. I'm channeling Billy Crystal from The Princess Bride. Crick in the neck. But yeah, so I think he's just trying to loosen up right now a little bit more. I think it's still very stiff, and I know fans might say, well, what's the big deal? It's a stiff neck. How do you not play with that? I don't think there's any jeopardy of him not playing because he did a lot of work yesterday, even though he was listed as limited. I just think it's a thing where, you know, when you think about the cornerback position and how much you have to turn and run and get your head around and all that stuff, that's hard when your neck doesn't want to turn without, you know, a shooting pain from whatever it was. Sleeping on it wrong, it could be anything. So I think he's just getting loosened up a little bit more here for a few minutes before he comes back out.
I got you. And that's what I was thinking, right? Neck injuries can come from just sleeping on it wrong sometimes, or neck pain, not necessarily an injury. Hey, let's talk about Devon Singletary. You know, with every day that goes by and no practice, I'm not saying it's becoming increasingly likely that he does not play, but you're getting up against it now. And I wonder your thoughts on this, Chris. Does the fact that they seem to be pretty well set up for depth at running back maybe lead them to play this a little more cautious with the rookie running back, Devon Singletary? What do you think?
I would tend to think so, and I think we cannot dismiss the fact that hamstrings are very tricky injuries, especially for players in a sport like football, which, as we know, is such an inherently explosive sport. Plays are short in length, but the explosiveness that you need to play with to be effective in this league at a number of positions impacts the hamstring greatly. I know Steve's had hamstring injuries. I've had hamstring injuries. You can jog and slowly build up to top speed with a hamstring injury, but if you try to explode, which at a running back position, at a cornerback position, at a wide receiver position, an offensive defensive line position, getting off the ball, it's explosive in nature. And when you go for that quick burst of speed, that's when a hamstring can go on you again. And I think that's what they're guarding against here. And I know that the team is not playing the look-ahead game, but the bottom line is this, guys. You're facing the worst-ranked run defense in football this week after San Francisco hung 259 rushing yards on them last week in Cincinnati. And you've got a pretty big divisional game next week. So my feeling and belief is they're going to err on the side of caution 100% in the hopes that perhaps Devon makes enough progress if he can't play this week to be ready for next week's game, which is a biggie.
Yeah, there's no question. And the problem is you get to a point where you can run, you start doing it, and you ask a little bit extra of that hamstring, and you're off the field for a month instead of just one more game. So I agree with you. They're probably playing it ultra conservative. Also, it just means, listen, TJ Yeldon's on the roster for a reason, and so is DeMarco. They can get through this game with the running backs they have on the roster without Devon Singletary. You just lose the top end of his abilities. The rest of these guys bring something to the table as well. So I think you can count on them feeling good about their roster going forward if Devon Singletary has to miss one or even two games with a hamstring. What about go ahead.
I was going to, and just to add to your point, Steve, Yeldon's going to get a ton of reps today because Singletary, as we already mentioned, not practicing, and Frank Gore typically gets his veteran rest day here on Thursdays, and that indeed seems to be the case here. So it's going to be a lot of Yeldon with carries and team portions of practice today. So it's not like he's going to be short on reps going into Sunday.
Hey, Chris, let me get your thoughts. And you've, of course, looked at the Bengals. I mentioned to Steve how I looked at, there are two games on video last night. There's enough there for Cincinnati, and I know a close loss and a blowout loss at home, but enough there that leads me to think that this is not going to be a walkover, right? I know their stats show they can't run the ball. They have trouble on defense, but there's enough there in the passing game for them offensively. Number 2 passing offense in the NFL this early stage of the season to indicate that you got to play these guys. They could be dangerous if they get a couple of breaks, right?
I think so, yes. And this is a team that has shown an ability to score off of big plays. John Ross being the chief provider of those big plays. People may have forgotten about John Ross, former first-round pick of the Bengals, 2017, ran a record 4.22 40 time at the NFL Combine, which I believe broke Chris Johnson's record, which stood for about 10, 12 years. And his rookie season, lost to injury, injured reserve, done, didn't do anything, didn't do a whole lot last year. And now, in this new offense under new head coach Zach Taylor, has completely taken off. I mean, I'm watching him make plays deep down the field against a good Seattle defense. Maybe not the Legion of Boom defense that they used to be, but still a very respectable defense. And he's making plays left, right, and center. Beat a blown coverage last week against San Francisco for a long touchdown. I think he's got a 66-yard touchdown, a 40-plus yard touchdown, and he has 4 or 5 other plays over 30 yards. So this is a guy that you absolutely cannot let get behind you. And we were talking to Tre'Davious White about that yesterday, and he said, with John Ross, you better stay on top because the dude is blazing, and he's 100% right.
One of the things I was going to ask you about strategy going into this game, and one thing when you've got a team like the Bengals who kind of depend on that big play, if you keep them off the field, I know it sounds crazy. I used to think about doing that with Dan Marino because they score so easily if the Dolphins, but this is a team that's going to have to do it in a big way. I think the Bengals are going to win with a big play, I would think. If Buffalo comes in, you might want to think about running the football like everybody else has thought about doing and been able to do and force them to do it, shorten the game like that. That brings into question the offensive line of the Buffalo Bills. Not so much that they dominate, but also, with the lack of running back depth, if Devon Singletary's in there, it also, there's a lot of layers to this, how it could get squirrely if you start thinking you're going to run the football. You're down a running back, even though your offensive line could be in a place where they could dominate.
Right, and you can even flip that script to the other side, Steve, because the reason they've had to throw so much is because their running game is virtually non-existent. Joe Mixon tried to play on that bad ankle last week, was ineffective. But really, guys, what we're looking at as far as the Cincinnati offensive line is a complete disaster, going all the way back to the spring. They draft Jonah Williams out of Alabama to be their new starting left tackle. He has a torn labrum in the spring, has surgery, and is not ready to play right now. So now they turn their attention. Cordy Glenn, by default, became the left tackle. He was still in concussion protocol, effective yesterday. So now they've got Andre Smith, a guy they didn't even want to re-sign, starting at left tackle, and now he's on the injury report with a groin injury. That's just left tackle, guys. Their left guard, Michael Jordan, not expected to play this week after suffering a knee injury. And then on the right side of the line, you got a guy who was a Bills cast-off in John Miller at right guard, and then right tackle Bobby Hart, who they signed to an extension. But you talk to Cincinnati reporters, they were scratching their head. Why did they give all this money to Hart? He's not that great a player, but that's kind of where they are right now as an offensive front. And you want to talk about the problem that the Bills' offensive line had last year in establishing the line of scrimmage? That's the problem that the Cincinnati Bengals have right now, and it's why they have been unable to run the football.
And it's a Buffalo defense, in particular defensive line, that has done a pretty good job getting after the quarterback. The Bengals have given up 9 sacks. The Bills, I would think, are looking for more pass rush pressure here this week and think they might be able to do it, huh?
I don't know about think, Murph. I think it's a pretty good bet. I mean, unless the Bengals decide to go max protect on almost every passing down. I mean, just think about this. Ed Oliver versus John Miller. I'll just leave it at that.
Wow.
Right. What's the tactic you expect the Bengals to come out with offensively? And they've got to get the ball out of Dalton's hand. And conversely, the Bills, they may think they can get pressure with just 4 guys every down instead of sending pressure. How do you think that plays out? Do the Bengals come out and sling it all over, or knowing they can't protect, or do the Bills not send pressure and force Dalton to throw it into a crowd?
Yeah, I think they go quick release throws to start the game, get the ball out of Andy's hand, try to get the passing game in some kind of rhythm, try to back that Bills defense off a little bit, and then try to incorporate some run plays off of the pass, because the pass game is what's working for them more than anything else. So turn to your strength. Hope you can get some quick hitters. Maybe the Bills aren't playing, press man all that much. They're playing a little soft, giving you stuff underneath. Take that early. Hope that can loosen them up, and then try to hit them, with some runs off of that. That's really the only way I see Cincinnati moving the ball with any consistent degree of success.
And let me flip it around a little bit, Chris, to the other side of the ball. The Bills' offense going against the Cincinnati defense. I see those numbers. I know what they say, and I saw what San Francisco did. And yet, when I look at Carlos Dunlap and Geno Atkins up front, I think the Buffalo offensive line will have to deal with those guys, right? Those are two pretty serious veteran defensive linemen that the Bengals have.
Yeah, I think it's two veteran players that have a lot of respect in this locker room here in Buffalo. Josh Allen referenced both of those guys by name and number yesterday. So it's very clear that those two guys are on the radar, and deservedly so. So, it's a situation where you have to account for certain people on the defensive side of the ball for Cincinnati, and you have to believe that, Brian Dable and company will have that squared away, or at least have a competent plan to address those matchup guys. But beyond that, I think you've got corners that can be beaten. William Jackson was a corner that was targeted by Seattle all day long in week 1 and was victimized several times. So I think it's something that's going to show up on film, and I think it's something that the Bills will have in their plan to try to take advantage of as well.
Chris, you wrote an article about John Feliciano and what he brings. One of the things we spoke about in preseason, the gift and the word that everybody used to describe him in training camp was toughness. He's one of those guys on this roster that I think is around because he gives the team and the roster and that side of the ball a little bit of grit when things might start to turn salty. Is that kind of what you get out of John Feliciano and his contribution as well?
Yeah. In a word, yeah. I mean, this guy has an edge to him, and there's a quote early in the story that you should read because I think it's his best summation of his own game. Because I was saying, well, why do you need to start garbage up front with your mouth? Because it's not enough for him to just bury someone and then, put his full body weight on top of them and let them know I owned you on this play. He's going to talk to them and tell them that too, because he almost wants that guy to talk back. Because he said when that colorful language gets really heated and intense, he says, that's where I want to go because I play better when it gets like that. And there's not too many guys that want to go to that place. This guy wants to go there because he knows it's going to make him play better on the field. So that's just a small example of the type of fire and competitive nature that he brings to the offensive line. And I'll tell you one more thing. I was talking to him about how things got heated in that final preseason or third preseason game against Detroit, where Cody Ford took umbrage when Mike Daniels, the defensive tackle, knocked him over the pile flat on his back at the tail end of a play when the play was clearly over in the preseason. Cody Ford took umbrage to that, went after him on the next play, and gave him a little extra when he was down on the ground. And he said that Mike Daniels, who's a known yapper in this league, went after Ford, and Ford talked right back at him. Feliciano said, that's when I knew Cody Ford was my guy. Based on that kind of stuff, he said it reminded me of myself as a rookie because John Feliciano's first NFL start was against Green Bay, and he was in a yapping match with Mike Daniels, who then said to Gabe Jackson, who was a guard on the Raiders at the time with Feliciano, you better talk to your rookie and tell him who he's messing with. And so Gabe goes up to John and says, what are you doing? And John looked him dead in the eye and said, I don't care. I don't care who that is. I don't care that I'm a rookie. We're going. Let's play. And that's the kind of attitude that he brings to this offensive line. And I can't tell you how excited he was to see that Cody Ford has a similar type attitude.
It's a story worth reading. It's right in the front of BuffaloBills.com. Chris Brown's post, how pure grit and a fiery disposition landed John Feliciano a starting role on the Bills' offensive line. Chris, thanks for this. Thanks for that. Thanks for writing that. We'll talk to you again. We appreciate it.
Yeah, sure thing. Hey, before I go, congrats, Murph, on your induction tonight into the Buffalo Broadcasters Hall of Fame. I'd be remiss if I did not mention that. So enjoy the evening tonight. I'm sure it's going to be a special night for you.
Thank you, Chris. That's awfully sweet. Thanks very much. That's cool. Chris Brown, Bills Insider, BuffaloBills.com.